Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 134. We talked a little bit about Jess Staley the other day when the news broke that he was under investigation for his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And you all know that I like to add more meat to the bone when at all possible. So we have another article that's discussing Jess Staley, and it goes into a little bit of detail about what's going on. And it's pretty interesting considering he supposedly is ready to talk to the FBI about what he knows about Jeffrey Epstein. And that's a pretty significant step. Not many of these guys have come forward to say that they're willing to do that. So I'm interested to see where this goes with Jess Staley and if he ever follows through with talking to the FBI. Because nobody has said that Jess Staley has been involved in the human trafficking portion of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's not what anyone's saying. What he was a money man. He was in charge of getting Jeffrey Epstein loans, securing loans for Epstein, and that sort of thing. But also, hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, again, you become an enabler. You become a conduit. He can use you now and say, hey, look, Jess Staley's hanging out with me. Why wouldn't you hang out with me? And what it does is it just keeps the cycle going. It keeps it going, and nobody stands up and says, I'm not hanging out with this guy. I don't care what he can do for me. I don't care if he can advance my career, etc., etc. I am not hanging out with this guy. None of these people did that. And this is after Epstein was arrested, folks, after the first arrest. So there's no excuse of saying, oh, I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what he was. Furthermore, a guy like Jess Staley shouldn't need Jeffrey Epstein to further his career. He shouldn't need Jeffrey Epstein to make him more successful. The man's the CEO of Barclays, and before that he was running, JP Morgan, and, on and on and on. But when is enough enough? The power is never enough for these people. They crave more, like a heroin addict craves their fix. These people crave more and more and more power. It's the only thing that gets them off when they get this rich, folks. It's the only thing that gets them off. You think they're walking into a casino and wagering a couple grand and they're feeling, they feel like they did something exciting? Hell no. They're at a whole different level than we are, and a whole different level than most normal people. These are truly the 1% of the world, and these people need to be stopped. All right, so the article is from thisismoney.co.uk. Headline: Barclay's boss Jess Staley willing to tell U.S. authorities everything he knows about pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. By Helen Cahill and Caroline Graham, Financial Mail on Sunday. Barclay's boss Jess Staley would be willing to tell the U.S. authorities everything he knows about pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein, the Mail on Sunday can reveal. Well, that's a significant step, right? We have to give credit where credit's due. If this man is willing to come forward and speak to the authorities and try and help the survivors get the justice they deserve, then you know what? Maybe you get a nod, you get a little bit of nod in your direction, a notch in the column of doing the right thing for once. And, that's a good start for a guy like Jess Staley. You're in a position that Jess Staley is in. This is a very high-profile position. You should take that seriously, and you should take it seriously who you're spending your time with, because the optics are terrible here. Victims of Epstein last night called on the banking chief to hand over any information he might have about his former client. 100%. He should definitely hand over whatever information he has. If he has any sort of paper trail that could provide the authorities some clarity on certain situations that had to do with Epstein's money laundering or whatever it may be, then he should provide them. But I have a funny feeling that when he was in charge over at JP Morgan, that he probably wasn't all the way on the up and up with the deals that he was giving out. When you're involved in the private banking section in one of these banks, you're doing a lot of things that are untowards. And there's a lot of straight up illegal money laundering going on, in my opinion. These people are not reliable, okay? These bankers are not reliable people. Lawyers for the victim said Staley, who joined Barclays 5 years ago, might have gained valuable insights, particularly around Epstein's finances, while acting as his private banker at JP Morgan between 2000 and 2013. As head of JP Morgan's private bank, Staley came to know Epstein well, and the pair stayed in touch until 2015, 7 years after Epstein was convicted of soliciting a child for prostitution. Again, if you know anything, Staley, you need to come forward. You should have come forward earlier. Yeah, at this point, what you're doing is you're basically just making yourself look like a fool and opening yourself to way more criticism and way more scrutiny. None of these people ever want to be honest, and none of these people ever want to just step forward and say, hey, this is what I saw. I had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein's criminal behavior, but this is what I saw when I was on the island, and looking back in hindsight, this shit was wrong. What he was up to was wrong. There shouldn't have been all those girls on this island, etc., whatever it may be. But none of these people have done anything like that. They all go and crawl into their hole, and then they release these canned statements that either their crisis manager releases, or Buckingham Palace releases, or some other nimwit releases. It's just, it's so... It's disingenuous on its face, and it's not the actions of innocent people. Lawyers urged Staley to speak to the FBI about his dealings with Epstein, who died in prison last year, as it could help in the battle to win compensation for women who were abused, such as Virginia Roberts, who has told how she was trafficked by the former friend of Prince Andrew. Again, if you're Jess Staley, just out of human decency alone, if your name is attached to this at all, don't you do whatever it is in your power to make sure that you're trying to help these survivors? Don't you at least set up some sort of meeting with them? I know I would. I would set up a meeting with them, and I would try and help them out. I would see if I could help them financially, whatever it may be. Because he has all the money in the world, a guy like this. This guy has all the money and all the power in the world. And to think that he's palling around with Jeffrey Epstein after Jeffrey Epstein has been convicted of what he was convicted of, it's so gross. I don't even understand how any of these people could put their head down on their pillow at night, especially these guys with daughters. There is no suggestion of any wrongdoing by Staley. It is understood that the Barclay's chief executive has not been approached by U.S. authorities and is unsure what assistance he could offer. However, it is understood that he would cooperate fully if asked. You know, I have to tell you, and again, let me preface this. I have no evidence of what I'm about to say, folks. But I bet you, if they went back and they traced Epstein's money through those accounts that Staley was in charge of over at JP Morgan, I can guarantee you that there is dirty money involved. And I can guarantee you that that money was washed through JP Morgan, either known to them or unbeknownst to them. I'll leave that up to the authorities to decide, but there is no way you're going to tell me if they forensically trace all of these transactions from the time period that Jeffrey Epstein was there, the 13 years that Staley was managing that account. If you're going to tell me if somebody goes through those with a fine-tooth comb, a forensic accountant, that they're not going to find that there's dirty money in there? Okay. Lisa Bloom, who represents several victims, told the MOS, for decades, prolific pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to victimize girls with impunity. Only now is law enforcement trying to get to the bottom of how this happened. Everyone who knew Epstein for any period of time must cooperate with law enforcement, including Jess Staley, who appears to have remained close with Epstein even after his sex crime conviction. We call upon Mr. Staley to do the right thing and tell the FBI what he knows. The intervention came as Staley's job hung by a thread last night. And here's where it gets interesting, folks. Remember I told you that all is not what it seems behind the scenes in this boardroom, and how the same situation that's going to occur with Les Wexner can occur easily right now, especially because they already have a man named Edward Bramson, who owns like 5.5% of Barclays, who could definitely use this whole entire crisis to try and get onto the board, which he tried to do earlier and failed. But with a situation like this, and an activist investor like Bramson, this is lining up to be really, really, really bad for Jess Staley. And you know what? You reap what you sow in life. You reap what you sow in life. You should not have been associating with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted, sir. I don't care if you're his personal banker. If that's the case and you're his personal banker, then you need to keep the relationship completely and utterly professional. He calls you if he needs to do a transaction. You're not over at his house. You're not on his boat. You're not on the island. None of that stuff. Barclay's chairman, Nigel Higgins, is understood to have become deeply concerned about the reputational damage to the bank after the UK financial watchdog last week launched a probe into whether Staley and Barclays had been truthful in their disclosures about the extent of his relationship with Epstein. The Financial Conduct Authority is investigating after U.S. regulators sent it a cache of emails between Staley and Epstein dating back to Staley's time at J.P. Morgan. Again, who knows if that's all of the emails? He could have easily went through those and, with a fine-tooth comb and picked out the ones that he wants to send, etc., etc. Now, I'm not saying he did that for sure, but I don't trust him to send the emails that are going to be scrutinized and looked at by J.P. Morgan and investigators. Why would he burn himself at the stake? City sources said the FCA investigation had triggered a power struggle at Barclays as board members faced potential criticism for his appointment. Barclays directors are understood to have been shown the cache of emails before they gave Staley their backing ahead of a crunch vote on his future in May. The board has nobody to blame but themselves either. They knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, with children, by the way, and yet they let Jess Staley, who had a very intimate relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, become the CEO of the company. I'm supposed to feel bad for them? I'm supposed to feel bad for Jess Staley? Negative. I don't feel bad for any of these people. You know who I feel bad for? Virginia Roberts, Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer. I feel bad for them. The probe into Staley's long-standing relationship with Epstein was launched in December, but only came to light last Thursday. A friend of Higgins told the MOS, "Clearly, the current board is worried. I think the chairman is very stressed out about it. Nigel Higgins is a nice guy. He's quite a straight shooter. I think they're going to get rid of Staley." I said this when this broke. And the people that I've talked to that work in the financial district, not with these people directly, obviously, but I have friends that work on Wall Street, and they told me the same thing, that Staley is on thin ice and his time is short. He's going to be pushed out. It's going to be something that goes on in the boardroom, and it's going to be either a hostile takeover or one of these insurgent investors is going to make the move, and Staley is going to be forced out. Staley has thus received the full backing of the board in public. Last night, an influential MP slammed the Barclays board for sticking by Staley. Meanwhile, sources warn that activist investor Edward Bramson, this is the guy I was talking about earlier, who owns 5.5% of Barclays shares, could try to use the crisis to destabilize the board. And this is the perfect time to strike. If you're looking to destabilize the board, maybe get involved in a hostile takeover, this is when you strike. When there's all sorts of issues going on around the board, there's all sorts of problems, this is when you make your move. And Bramson, who has lost a lot of money after, buying in on this 5.5% share of Barclays, wants this company moving in the right direction. And can you blame him? A former Barclays executive came to Staley's defense and insisted the bank had done nothing wrong. No, of course they haven't. The banksters never do anything wrong, folks. The fiduciary banking system is not set up to make you and I be financial slaves or anything. No, never. These banksters, they definitely have your best interest at heart. He said headhunter firm Spencer Stewart, which helped recruit Staley, had not flagged any issues over Epstein before he was appointed. Oh, so there they go, passing the buck already. So now it's Spencer Stewart's fault. The firm, Spencer Stewart, it's their fault because they didn't do their due diligence. The former executive, who asked not to be named, said, "Anyone who runs a wealth management business constantly meets and encourages people who are wealthy. All I know is Jess is a person of the highest integrity. It wouldn't be a sin to engage with wealthy people, and many wealthy people have skeletons in their cupboards. Yeah, well, guess what? It is a sin to associate with him outside of work when they're already charged and convicted of sex crimes. That is a sin, okay? It's gross, is what it is as well. And it's not the behavior that you would expect of the CEO of a company like Barclays. Staley visited Epstein during his 13-month prison sentence in 2008 and again in 2015 on a boat trip with his wife to Epstein's Caribbean retreat, later dubbed Pedo Island. Think about that, folks. Staley visited Epstein during his 13-month prison sentence, so I guess he visited him in jail? Wow. And again in 2015 on a boat trip with his wife to Epstein's Caribbean retreat. This guy has to be run off the board. He has to lose this job, in my opinion, and still speak with the authorities because he obviously knows more than he said. He knows more than he released to the board when he was telling them about his relationship with Epstein, and there's definitely more here. And once again, it goes back to if they could get Ghislaine Maxwell and get her under the microscope, well, boy, there could be some serious ramifications for everybody involved in this. The visit took place just months before Staley was named Barclay's chief executive in October of 2015. He has said his contact with Epstein had tapered off by that point. Questions remain over how financier, pedophile, Epstein, found hanged in his prison cell last August, age 66, accumulated vast wealth estimated at around $634 million. He owned 3 valuable properties, 2 jets, and the 75-acre island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He was also the owner of an expensive collection of art, jewelry, and cars, which should all be liquidated ASAP, and it should all be given to the victims. It has been suggested that his estate could be used for a victims fund for the women he assaulted. The Epstein scandal last summer prompted Barclays to cut ties with the flagship Pitch at Palace business initiative of Prince Andrew, who was friends with the pedophile. Isn't that how about that for hypocrisy, huh? You got your own CEO with his own ties to Epstein, and you're cutting ties with Pitch at Palace because of Andrew? Hello, pot, I'm kettle, but you're black. Conservative MP Kevin Hollenrake said, Barclays have decided maintaining a relationship with Prince Andrew would clearly bring the bank into disrepute, so they can hardly say Jess Staley's situation, if he maintained a relationship with Epstein, isn't problematic. Speaking to journalists last week, Staley said, I thought I knew him well, and I didn't. For sure, with the hindsight of what we all know now, I deeply regret having any relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, shove it. Oh, just shove it already. You didn't know. That's the same excuse all of these clowns use. Well, in hindsight, if I had known. Well, you did know. You were hanging out with him after he was convicted, you moron. What do you mean? What do you mean, you jackwagon? You didn't know. For somebody who's supposed to be so smart, Mr. Staley, you sure are pretty damn stupid. At the company's annual general meeting in May, investors will vote on the re-election of directors to the Barclays board. If Staley, 63, loses his board seat, his position as chief executive could become untenable. Barclays, Spencer Stuart, J.P. Morgan, and Edward Bramson declined to comment. Folks, it is just heating up for Jess Staley, just like it's just heating up for Dubin and Wexner. All of these dudes are going to get what's coming to them, and the pressure is on. The full court press is on, and these guys they're backtracking. They don't know what to do at this point. They have no idea how to handle the pressure that's coming at them. They have never been under the microscope like this. They've always had their cronies in the media protect them, but their cronies in the media can't even protect them anymore, because guess what? The cronies in the media, they can't even protect themselves at this point. Everything they do is called fake news. Everything they do is questioned. Everything they do is looked at with a microscope, because they have destroyed their own credibility. All of these people. And guess what? We're going to be here to call them out on it the whole entire time, because this will not go unchallenged. A man like Jess Staley should not have the position he has. He should step down and, in my opinion, directly speak to the authorities, because it's obvious that him and Jeffrey Epstein were a lot tighter than he let on. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. Also, if you enjoy our work and you like the content and you would like to help the podcast, you can do that by clicking on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. All right, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow morning with the morning update and the usual daily drop. Hope you all have a fantastic Saturday, and if you're going out tonight and you're partying and you're having drinks, please do not get behind the wheel. All right, everybody, until tomorrow.